Thanks for tuning in once again to ProLine TV, the Our Lads Football Network, as we take a look at championship week in college football. And also we'll take a look at week 14 in the NFL. Make sure to check us out tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern for the Playbook ATS podcast with Mark Lawrence hosting, Jim Feist, Andy Isco. I'll be there. And also a special guest, Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post, will join us. Ryan is an NFL writer, covers the New York Giants for a living as well. So we're going to get his take on what's going on with the Giants during their bye week, Jackson Dart, who the next head coach is going to be, maybe even who the next general manager is going to be, and some more additional NFL talk with our special guest, Ryan Dunleavy, on the Playbook ATS podcast tomorrow at 1 Eastern. All right, so let's get to it. Let us first start off with college football. And we're going to take a look at the rankings that came out on Tuesday night, last night. I had a good comment from one of our viewers talking about how surprised he was that I had Texas A&M ranked so highly compared to where Texas A&M is ranked right now, as far as the committee is concerned, at number 7. And again, this was my look, not tomorrow, but next week, and how I thought it was going to shake out. And that could still be the case. I mean, I don't think so, because Ole Miss isn't playing, Oregon isn't playing. I guess the only thing that could move them up would be a BYU and Alabama win, and then maybe they could climb as high as 5, still a little bit lower than I had. And my explanation really was the same thing I've said for years. And that is, and really I should know better of what we talked about on Monday. For me, trying to predict what the committee is going to do is really, it's just not easy. Not just because it's a prediction that is not easy, but because the committee, there's just a bunch of jokers. And I don't care if it's college basketball or college football. I've heard it all before, and I don't know what's going to happen next week. I don't know whether or not we're going to get a shocker, but at this point, nothing surprises me anymore with the committee. And what these committees do is they decide what they want to do as far as which teams they want where. And so forth. And then they will put a narrative towards what their picks are, what their selections are. And then the very next year, they'll change that narrative again to fit their selection when it's maybe the exact opposite narrative of what they did the previous year. In other words, they're completely inconsistent. There is no rule book regarding, okay, if you do this, if your team does, and I'm okay with there not being a rule book. I'm okay with that because this is a flawed system and these are humans. But what drives you crazy about it more than anything, in my opinion, is the simple eye test and just common sense. That combination, it really is something that just angers you, whether it's basketball or football. And I knew that we were going to get this. Of course, it happens whether it was, hey, you know what? We got a 4-team playoff, right? That's a playoff. And then when it went to 4 to 12, everybody said, well, you're going to be complaining when it's 13. And basically it's debating, and and I have no problem saying, hey, so-and-so didn't deserve this, and so-and-so needed to be in, and so-and-so didn't. But in reality, when it's all said and done, a couple of years ago, when we were thinking about this, you figured, well, based on the way the system was in college football, well, why would this be a matter? I mean, you have these great teams in college football. Usually you would have 2 or 3 really great teams every year. And then you'd have a couple of teams that, maybe if they're, again, if it's a 4-team playoff, a couple of other teams that probably deserved it, and you would really be interested to see, hey, what would happen if that team played one of those great teams? And so at that point, you're like, oh, come on, you get to 12. Who cares what 6 through 12 is going to say? They got no chance. But everything has changed over the last couple of years. And as we know, now with the transfer portal, yes, indeed, anything can happen in these playoffs now. Any team has a chance now. And I don't care. I mean, the only teams who really don't have a realistic chance are the group of 5 teams. And that's it. I haven't seen one last year. I didn't see one this year that says, hey, wait a second. I think that team, even if my favorite, South Florida, would have got in, no way would I have thought that they would have done anything but maybe win a playoff game. And that's all you can really hope for if you're a group of 5 team right now. Is you get into the playoffs and you hope to shock some team, and that's your season. And that's about it. But other than that, if you take a look at the way it's broken down so far this year, look at this. Look at these teams. Look at right now, BYU, Miami, Texas, Vanderbilt, Utah would be out. Okay? So especially these 4 teams, Miami, Texas, Vanderbilt, Utah, more than likely, all 4 of these teams are going to miss the playoffs. It doesn't mean that Miami easily has the best chance. But more than likely, you are going to see Miami with a chance if any other team, especially Alabama, loses, and we'll get to that in just a second. But other than that, Texas, Vanderbilt, Utah, there's just no chance, because Texas has no chance because Miami's 12, Texas 13. They're not playing. So Texas, there's just no chance. Again, we talked about this on Monday. Forget the rankings that I went over. Just the facts are the facts. If you look at it right here, again, Texas Tech right now, and that's it. Texas Tech. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, because if you look at it, look, if BYU beats Texas Tech, in my mind, is going to get knocked out. That is going to open up a spot potentially for a second team. Miami can get in with a Texas Tech or an Alabama loss. Now, I don't think Texas Tech is losing. I would be very surprised if that happens. But if Alabama loses to Georgia, and I don't think Alabama is losing either, but if Alabama loses to Georgia, then I believe Miami's getting in over Alabama. Some people, I've seen some people talk about and write, oh, it really doesn't matter what Alabama does, because they're in the SEC championship game. If they lose, they're still going to get in. Really? Is that what you think? They're hanging on at 9th. Okay? A 3-loss team. A 3-loss team is not going to get in this season. Not with Miami having a win over Notre Dame and being 10-2. And don't forget, Alabama's got a loss against Florida State. They can't forget that. And they won't be forgiven for it. So if you lose to Florida State, a team that didn't even go to a bowl, how do you expect to go with 3 losses to the playoffs? And again, this is another thing we've talked about, why some of these teams are better off not playing in these championship games. Just imagine if Alabama loses and they get knocked out. What's going to happen? You're going to hear that as a big talking point. And the problem is these conferences don't want to get rid of the championship game because it's a moneymaker. So they're going to have to figure out another way that if they get rid of it, how are we going to get that money back? Is it an extra round in the playoffs? Is that what's going to help when you go to 16 eventually? Does that help you earn more money overall? I don't know. But if Alabama loses and they get knocked out because they played in a championship game, and again, I don't see any way that they're going to be still alive. I mean, look, you got Miami still behind Notre Dame. Well, that's not changing. These two teams they don't play again. So it's, again, I think we're in a situation that I never thought we'd be in a few years ago. I really didn't. Uh, which is again why I thought all along when he went to 12, I was very happy. Thank you. I love it. And I'm really not complaining about it because I've been through the four and even before that, just voting on the champion for a majority of my life. So I'm not complaining about it. But it's just dumb that we don't have a 16 team playoff. It's just dumb. And we're going to get there. It's typical NCAA. Give us a little bit of what we've been asking for, but then really don't give it all. And we got to wait and wait. And we're going to wait a few more years until you go to the 16. And then we're finally where we're going to be for a very long time, I would hope, because 16 is the number that makes perfect sense. And then you can have Miami and Texas and Vanderbilt and Utah potentially all in the playoffs as well. And any of those teams could win a championship. So we'll see. Should be a fun weekend with all of this on the line. And, the Texas Tech one is going to be interesting if they were to lose to BYU. I know everybody's talking about Alabama for good reason, but the reason I think Texas Tech is in trouble is because of who they lost to. They lost to Arizona State. And let's just say they're a two-loss team, right? All right. So let's see. So let's move them down here. Let's see. Texas A&M, they had a better loss. They're also in a better conference. Now, if you want to Alabama, let's say they win the SEC championship. So there's no way they're not going anywhere, obviously. And then you have Oklahoma and Notre Dame. Now, I have no problem. They want to say, hey, we'll bump Oklahoma. But you're not bumping Notre Dame. I honestly don't know what this is. I know there are probably some Notre Dame fans that are getting very nervous about why Alabama jumped Notre Dame. And again, the hypocrites regarding the committee, because they came out and talked about how they talked about Vanderbilt. But they talked about Texas jumping Vanderbilt. He mentioned that because Vanderbilt does not have any significant wins, which is fine. I got no problem with that. That makes a lot of sense. Matter of fact, let me see. I want to get out exactly because this was from The Athletic, and I want to read to you exactly what it was because it was a really good point that they made. Let's see, where is it? And I can't show it to you, unfortunately, because it's a paid service. So I'm going to have to read it. Let's see. Where are we? Okay, let me see if this is it. Let's see. Nope, unfortunately, that's not it. No word yet, though. By the way, I have been completely offline in the last few hours prepping for the show. So if anybody heard anything about Penn State and their situation about finally getting their head coach, I mean, that's just terrible. We will at some point find out who their head coach is going to be. But at this point, it is not, it's really, you're starting to wonder what's going on over there. I know there were some people who really felt that, all right, that's it. The wave happened and it's got to be Sataki. Well, I don't know. I mean, I wonder now if they're going to be so desperate that they're going to go out there and they're going to do something. They're going to do something rash, like, maybe making a deal. I don't know, for a Lincoln Riley or someone like that. Where it's going to be, like, they're going to just give him the farm. And again, it doesn't have to be a Lincoln Riley, but because you get to this point, it's an embarrassing situation to be in, and you really don't want to have to. You really don't want to have to embarrass yourself any longer, because if all of the top candidates are gone, especially the ones that everybody was considering that were the top candidates to go to Penn State, then I don't know who's left. I just don't. I know there's a few guys out there that are still possible, but we're in a bad situation if you're a Penn State fan. Hopefully Marty and Dylan our Penn State guys will have something to say about it. I'm sure they will once there is a job handed out. Okay, I couldn't find it. I don't know where it is. But the bottom line is they were being contradicting once again. The point is that they basically excused Alabama for their loss, for their close win to Auburn, talking about how, like Vanderbilt, like I said, that Vanderbilt had these wins. Matter of fact, I think they even slammed them for the Auburn close win or something like that, or something similar. And then here's Alabama, and they praised Alabama for beating Auburn, which is a non-bowl team. So again, they just said what they just, once again, they put their foot in their mouth by just trying to justify their selection or their move and that's the thing that should scare Notre Dame or anybody else, Oklahoma even, because it doesn't make any sense. And if you don't make any sense, then I would be really, really concerned if I'm Oklahoma. Look, I don't think there's any chance Notre Dame is not getting in, because anybody with common sense that watches college football, and whether you're a diehard fan or you do it for a living, can watch Notre Dame and know that they're more than capable, and probably should be, if you look at it, one of the top teams outside of, say, those top Ohio State winner, Big Ten winner, that sort of thing. And if you want to say SEC winner, but they're right there. Okay. There's no way that 11 teams in the Power Four are better than Notre Dame. There is no chance. And I get it. I get Notre Dame doesn't have like a very tough schedule this season, the way it all unfolded. And they lost their, the two biggest games. But once again, the week 1 game was on the road. The week 2 game, they lost on a 4th down play at the end. So come on, everybody knows Notre Dame is a national championship contender, and they've got to get in. But I will say this: I am not, except for the fact that I'd be upset because I did put money on Notre Dame to win the national championship. I would be okay if they screwed Notre Dame, only because, and I mentioned this even like last year, and we'll keep mentioning this until Notre Dame decides to enter a conference, that one of these years Notre Dame's going to get screwed. And they're going to get screwed because they're not affiliated with a conference. And when that happens, look, I don't think Notre Dame is going to change because they're making way too much money as an independent. So I'm not saying that this is something that will open their eyes and they're, we just got screwed out of the playoffs. We're not in a conference, so we got to go to a conference, and it's going to cost us $1 billion. No, they're not going to do that. They're not stupid, so it's not going to happen. But it is something that Notre Dame has to deal with. Just like I believe that it's something that Indiana is going to have to deal with in the next several years if they're on the bubble. Because if Indiana is on the bubble in the next several seasons, they are not making it. Because as we've said before, nobody has a more embarrassing non-conference schedule since last year and for the next 3 years, including this year, than Indiana. So, all right, let's get to it. Let's talk about championship week. Enough of this. All this is projection anyway. So we have a lot to get into. Let's pop up the games. We'll start with the game in the Sun Belt Conference. And you have Troy, James Madison, and just a crazy number now at 23.5, 14-1 on the money line. I do think if you're looking for an outright upset this week, if you're looking to make some money that way, I'm okay with Troy because of the fact that James Madison is such a heavy favorite and they're expected to win. And there's a little bit of pressure on them as well. The only reason why I don't think there's a ton of pressure on them is because most people don't believe they're getting in. The only way that they do get in, though, and there is a chance, as we mentioned on Monday, Duke has to upset Virginia. And if Duke upsets Virginia, there is an opening for James Madison. So look, it's too bad that game didn't happen first. So we would find out. I'm sure Troy would have liked it because that would have put a lot more pressure on James Madison. So there is some pressure on James Madison. Home favorite, supposed to win, all of that. Everybody's expecting a blowout. And here comes Troy, 4-1. ATS is a road dog this year. Very proud of Troy. As you know, for the past few months, we've touted them as our pick to play in the championship game. And they finally got it done. It looked a little nerve-wracking there a few weeks ago after they lost that one to Arkansas State. But they were able to find their way in with the big upset last week over Southern Miss. So good going, Troy. But unfortunately, it looks like it's the end of the line. Next up, and these are also Friday night games, you have the matchup in the Conference USA with Kennesaw and Jacksonville. Yeah, I'm a little torn in this one because I've really been behind Kennesaw, as you know, for just like Troy for the past couple of months. So I've been very, 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 what the right word is. I just think it's a cool thing that a program that came in from the FCS that was god awful last year, one of the worst in the FCS and the FBS, for them to turn it around, for Chris Mack to come in there as a first-year head coach and turn it around, that they're in the championship game, is just an awesome accomplishment. Now, it couldn't have happened in any conference except the Conference USA because it's just a bad conference. But hey, that doesn't matter. They're in the championship game, so good for them. Amari Odom is a really exciting young quarterback for the Owls. They've got also, Bernard is a nice receiver. He makes some big plays. That gives him a little bit more of a weapon than Jack State has. Jack State's got a decent receiver, this kid DeAndre Johnson. Jack State's more about Creel and Cook, the quarterback running back combo. Very, very tough. Redshirt freshman, Creel. Matter of fact, Odom's a sophomore. So we could see both of these teams in the championship game for the next couple of years. But the thing with Jacksonville State, is we've talked about for about a month now, just reminding everybody, is they are really tough at home. Very tough at home. They have now a 13-3 ATS number as a home team in the FBS. Now, it started in 2023. So again, 13-3 against the spread. They are 4-0 straight up as a home dog this year. That's right. For some reason, they've been a home dog 4 times. They're 5-0 straight up at home on the season. They've won 6 out of 7. And they've beaten Kennesaw both times they played them. They beat them last year as a 17-point road favorite, 63-24. That's how bad Kennesaw was last year. And then beat them again by 9 as a 3-point home dog this year. And that was proof to me. That was the last proof I needed that this home deal with Jacksonville State was real. It meant something. And they beat Western Kentucky last week. That's why I picked them last week. This home thing matters. Kennesaw, though, they won 9 out of 10. Who did they lose to? Jacksonville State. And here's the thing. They outgained Jacksonville State in that game, the Gamecocks, by 128 yards. But I wouldn't get too much into that because it was a blowout. Really, it was a 32-13 game at one point in the fourth quarter. So obviously they're just going to play a little bit more laid back to defense. That's what usually happens. Still got to give credit for the team to put those numbers up. But still, Odom, by the way, threw 3 picks in the game. That was his worst game of the season. They had like 4 interceptions because they play the other quarterback sometimes. So I have to take Jacksonville State in this one. I just do. I think Kennesaw has proven to be, to me, the better team this season. I really think they've been the better team. But Jacksonville State being at home. And this is a situation too that I think is interesting because we have another game very similar to this. I think one or two more that are similar to this regarding rematches. So Kennesaw was a 3-point favorite. What was it? I think about a month ago or something like that. I forget when it was. And they lost. And they were down, like I said, they were down 32-13 in the fourth quarter. And Jacksonville State, a few weeks later, they return home to play the team that they really handled, and they're the dog again. So now the point, at least the number came down a little bit. I think they were a 3-point. Yeah, now it's 2-point. All right, well, 2.5. Wow, half point. Excuse me. But a lot of times, this is just the way I do it. I'm not a professional handicapper. I've said that more. I say it all the time, just to make sure that you guys understand this. But 90% of the time, I'm going to go with that team. I'm taking Jacksonville State 90% of the time. It doesn't make now. Look, if the first matchup was a fluke and the other team outgained it by 250 yards, that sort of thing, well, that's the 10% that I'll go with the other team. But I see I'm sorry, but as much as I've been on Kennesaw this year, and as not as much on Jacksonville State, because the only time I'm taking Jacksonville State, I think I've taken them like twice, both at home, and so I understand that. But the fact is that I can't go against Jacksonville State at home. I just can't do it. So if you can, more power to you. I don't think that this is going to be an easy game either way, but I would say this, based on what happened earlier this year, if one team is going to make this a 3-quarter game and the game will be over by mid-fourth quarter or before the fourth quarter begins, I think that team is going to be Jacksonville State. So anyway, there you go. Should be a good one. Jacksonville State's a defending champs as well. So, hey, I hope Kennesaw wins. I really do, except for the fact that I'll be betting Jacksonville State. But I won't be betting them a lot. I can't do it. I can't bet them a lot. Okay. Who else do we have? Oh, now another road favorite. Yeah, this one surprises me a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. Because of the fact that if you look at Tulane, check this out. Since the 2022 turnaround, this is when Willie Fritz was there and Tulane became a relevant AAC team. This is only the second time, period, that Tulane has been a dog in a conference game. That's right. Since the turnaround, that's 2022, 2023, 2024, and this year. Since then, they have only been a dog once in conference play. That was this year at Memphis, and they beat Memphis. Okay, so that's what North Texas is going up against. They are the road favorite at Tulane. And again, I understand why. Drew Mestamaker is having a fantastic season. If you look at the way that they've been destroying teams, they've won 6 straight up ATS by a 50-21 margin. So they are just killing teams. I get that. I mean, if you look at Tulane, yeah, look, they got this Retzlaff guy, and he's a winner. He was a winner at BYU, and and then when he left, remember when he left, everybody like panicked at BYU and thought, oh, it's going to be terrible for BYU. And don't forget, we had BYU as our official long shot in the Big 12, and they came through for us. But that was because they were able to bring in Bachmeier, who's turned into one of the top freshman quarterbacks in the country. Still a little bit of a surprise. I get that. But that's the Big 12, right? Those are the things that happen in the Big 12, I guess, the new Big 12. But for Tulane and for Retzlaff, he has kind of had the same run in just this season. It's one season. He's not a power passer, and they're not a pass first type team either. I mean, Retzlaff is leading the team in rushing. Now, if he's rushing for over 1,000 yards, that's okay, but he has only 561 with 14 touchdowns. So that's so again, if you're looking at it from that point of view, I understand why North Texas is favorite, because Tulane just doesn't have that offensive, high power offense, and that can be misleading though at times. And once you get, it's sort of like in every sport, really. Once you start getting into playoffs and championship games, and you see it in hockey, where all of a sudden all the games are tightly, after just everybody flying up the ice during the regular season. Once you get to the playoffs, everything is more condensed and tougher and tighter, and lower scoring. And that's the same thing when you're getting into playoffs and championship games. And you could have these great runs like North Texas is on, but now every game you play is going to be against a good team. And Tulane is definitely a good team. Look, you know where I stand in this conference. I still believe South Florida is the best team. They beat North Texas 63-36. Okay. So if that's not proof enough why I think South Florida is the best team, once again, the only reason they're not here is because they couldn't stop a triple option. Other than that, they would have been here. Look at North Texas. Keep this in mind. Their best wins this season, 2 of them were in overtime. Okay, so they won twice in overtime. Both not conference games, though. They beat Western Michigan and Army in overtime. Actually, the Army game was. So just imagine, Army, overtime, they lose that game, they're not here. They also beat Washington State Navy. So those are their top wins. And I told you their loss. For Tulane, their wins are a little bit more impressive. Again, the road win at Memphis. They also beat Army, and they also beat East Carolina. But in the non-conference schedule, their wins were a little bit more impressive. They beat Duke and Northwestern. So both bowl teams, and one just happened to be in the championship game. So their wins just a little bit more impressive, which again is why I don't care. I've been doing this long enough. I don't care about how one team looks because of their dynamic offense and they blow teams out all the time. I don't care about that stuff because look, I just mentioned this last week. Just to reiterate, defense wins championships. Now, Tulane doesn't have this great defense, though. So that is the thing to keep in mind. Another reason why I could see why North Texas is favorite. I get that. Now, these two teams have played, not this year, but they played the previous 2 years. And it's the only time they've played since North Texas came to the league. And Tulane beat them both times. So North Texas is looking for their first win against Tulane as American rivals. Both head coaches are gone. We know that, which is a very weird situation, but it is what it is. And unfortunately, too, neither team had a really good end of the season. I mean, a really impressive end of the season competition-wise. Both teams in their last 3 games of the season played like 3 of the worst type or easier type teams that you can play. I mean, North Texas did beat Temple, which was trying to get to a bowl, but that was it. Out of the 6 games that these two teams played combined in the last 3 games of the season, that was the best game. That was the best competition for either team. So it is what it is. It's just the way the season went because of tiebreakers. And speaking of the way the season went with tiebreakers, and I tell you what, if you really do think about it, tiebreakers in college football have been such a failure this season, such a failure. This is one situation, again, the whole South Florida thing. Then you've got this one. This is just embarrassingly bad. Just these two teams are in the championship game again. I mean, seriously, was there any point all season, any point at all, that anybody thought we'd see UNLV and Boise State in the championship game again? No. But somehow by the last game of the season, when it was all said and done, and you had like 10 teams in a tiebreaker or whatever they had, they spat out these two teams again. Now, maybe if UNLV had like beaten Boise and we'd have a little back and forth where maybe they've split their last 4 meetings or they split the championship, but no. Boise, if you take a look at how they've owned this series recently, they've beaten UNLV 4 straight up ATS since the 2023 season, including the 2 back-to-back championship games. And by the way, they won the 2 championship games by a combined 38 points, beating 56-31 this year. Okay? Plus, Maddox Madsen returns. I mean, I'm kind of surprised I'm still only having to give 4.5 now with Madsen returning, because really, they were a 3-point favorite when the week began. So would I rather give 3 and have the backup for Boise State, or give 4.5 with Madsen? So yeah, I don't know how you could take UNLV here. Now, maybe, look, it would be nice to see UNLV win this game, but until they do it, why would I do that? Again, they 56-31 this year. They've owned this team. Now, UNLV is playing better than Boise State to end the season, so they do have that momentum going. This is probably as good as UNLV has played all year. They won 4 straight. Their only cover loss during that 4-game winning streak was an overtime win against Utah State. They won by 3. They were a 5-point favorite at home. Boise, meanwhile, 2-2 straight up, 1-3 against the spread in their last 4, and they're in the championship game. Oh, by the way, and they're at home. Absolutely embarrassing. What an embarrassing conference. Again, tiebreakers just killing college football, killing it. Now, here we got another rematch, and unfortunately, this is where we're going to have to cut ties with my long shot, BYU. Look, I made him a long shot. I'm happy for it. They made it there. Good going, BYU. But realistically speaking, I don't see how they're going to be able to win this game. I just don't. This is just a bad matchup for them. And we saw it a few weeks ago. I mean, they beat BYU. Texas Tech did 29-7. They held them to just 255 yards. And again, BYU needs to run the football. Mentioned Bachmeier, the freshman quarterback. He's a runner first. LJ Martin, really like him. I think if he can stay healthy at the next level, that's going to be his issue. I think he'll drop at least a round in the draft just because of his injury. He's always banged up. So it's going to be just, look, Texas Tech is the number 1 ranked rushing defense in college football. And BYU needs to run. And they can't. They tried. What did they have? They had 67 yards rushing with a 2.5 average in that matchup. I don't care that it's a neutral site. That doesn't mean anything to me. Now, when you have the number 1 ranked defense in rushing going up against a team that needs to run the football, I just don't see it. Throw in the fact that Texas Tech has won all of their games, all 11, by 22 or more points. Now, I'll have to give it for BYU because BYU lost by 22. They were the team that lost the least, but it was 22 still. All right. So I don't see it. I just don't. I don't know how. Look, and it's going to be at AT&T, so you throw in the fact that there'll be more fans there as well for Texas Tech. So there'll probably even be a little bit of an edge. Not a true edge, but still they'll definitely have an edge as far as the home crowd is concerned. I know it's a lot of points, but when you've beaten all of your opponents, now I know they lost because they did. That's important to note. They're not undefeated, but still, when you've beaten all 11 of your teams by 22 or more, I'm not worried about 12.5. Now we get into the MAC and another one of these situations. So yeah, this is the second of three where we're going to have a team as the short. I think all three of them are 2-point favorites: Kennesaw, Western Michigan, and Georgia. All three of those teams are favorites, and all three of those teams were favorites. Actually, Western Michigan wasn't. Two of them weren't, but Western Michigan wasn't. And all three of those teams lost to the team they're playing in the championship game. So Western Michigan, or at least Western Michigan, they were on the road. And again, they were a dog, short dog, 2-point dog, I think it was. So now it's a neutral site, and it's but they flipped the number to 4 points. 2-point dog to 2-point favorite, and they lost to Miami. Now, that wasn't a fluke loss either. I mean, Miami outplayed them in the game. There is a big point, and that is no DeQuan Finn. And maybe that's part of the reason they're a 2-point dog. Another thing to keep in mind, and this is why it's a perfect example of why you can't always look at head-to-head. Sometimes you can, but sometimes you can't. And here's a perfect example. Let's say Western Michigan and Miami did not play. All right. And all we had to do is look at their schedule. Let's do both. Let's say they didn't play and all we had was their schedule. Western Michigan, and let's say that the two best teams that they both played. Well, Western Michigan beat Ohio and Toledo. The two best teams that were not in the championship game, Ohio and Toledo. Miami lost to Ohio and Toledo. Edge, Western Michigan. Hence, Western Michigan must be better. No, not necessarily, because let's flip it over now. Head-to-head, Miami beats Western Michigan. So if we go with that fact, if we say, well, yeah, head-to-head matters. All right, well, you're right, because Miami beat Western Michigan, even though Western Michigan looked better in their wins over Ohio and Toledo. So it's not a perfect science, and that's why I think when you're breaking down those sort of tiebreakers, that's why I think that these conferences nowadays, with everything that's so on the line, with going to the playoffs and all the money and everything, I think these conferences have to adjust their tiebreakers. I really do. And what I think they need to do, and I don't think they should adjust it to rankings, because that's taking it out of their hands. Because I wouldn't, if I'm running the conference, I'm not going to say, okay, well, we're not going to, if we have we don't have head-to-head to go with, then the next thing we're going to, I'm not going to the team with the highest ranking, because that takes it out of your hands. So instead, what I'm doing is I'm saying, if head-to-head doesn't work, then we as a conference, and maybe, hey, I'll appoint a certain number of, just like the NCAA has, I'm going to appoint maybe just 2 others. We'll have 2 other people here with the administration that I'm going to appoint, that we will get together in a room, the 3 of us, and we will let you know. Matter of fact, me as the commissioner, I'll be the tiebreaker. So we'll have 2 other administrative people there. And so, for instance, if we're in the ACC and that's how we handled it, and we had this multiple tiebreaker situation, well, Miami's in, obviously, right? That's how we're going to handle it. And we're not going to have this Duke nonsense. Same thing with some of these Boise and UNLV. We're not going to do this again. But I think I think I'd rather do it that way. Now, I don't know. I don't see that that's something that they're going to plan on doing. But I think they should come up with something. They have to come up with an idea where they just throwing this into some stupid tiebreaker formula is just not the way to go. So moving on, a couple of other things. We spoke about DeQuan Finn not being there. So this is important. So Thomas Gutkowski, a young quarterback, took over. And he's only been playing. He only has 2 starts since DeQuan Finn left. And the good news for Miami fans is they've got themselves a quarterback. And he's only, I think he's a redshirt freshman. I believe he is. So that means he's going to be there for the next several years. So they're going to have another good quarterback in Miami. Now, he's going to have to step it up. Big environment, championship game. We'll see how he handles that pressure. But, last week they needed to win to get into this position. And even though he didn't play one of the top teams, it was Ball State, he threw for 226 yards and 3 touchdowns. Not bad for your second start. So, and I like what I saw in film. I think he's going to be just fine. So, I'm sorry, but this is one of those situations again that I'm going to have to take the opposite team. I'm going to have to go with Miami of Ohio, just like I'm doing against Kennesaw with Jacksonville State. A few years ago, I would have stuck with Kennesaw State. I would have stuck with Western Michigan, and that's just what I would have done. But I think I've learned a lot over the years, and this is where you got to throw away that you feel here with a specific team that you've been with and you've been following all year. And for the most part, they've been doing a really good job of giving back, covering games, things of that nature. And this is, again, just like Kennesaw, I'll be, in a way, I don't mind these situations because it's like I can't lose. So if Kennesaw wins, oh, that's nice. If Western Michigan wins, oh, that's nice. Hey, because again, Western Michigan was, I think they were one of my long shots this year as well. So again, just like it worked out for BYU, very happy to see Western Michigan here. And if you want to check out the preseason prediction show, all you have to do is go back, check it out from the week before the season began. And I went over everything. I went over every conference and I made my predictions, my championship predictions. I had a long shot pick, a sleeper pick in every conference. So Western Michigan was definitely there. And look, Lane Taylor, and the reason is because I've been a Lane Taylor fan. I think he was the right man for the job here. I really felt confident that he was going to get the job done, and he did. Now, I didn't know when that was going to happen, but it happened this year. So a big part is Brock Lowry, the new quarterback there, but he's mostly a runner, and they're not a dynamic offense, but he's a difficult kid to stop. But I don't really see a major advantage either way. Again, I think Western Michigan has had the better team this year. But when these two teams got together in their only matchup, it's also the only loss for Western Michigan in the MAC. When they got together, Miami did beat Western Michigan. And I think that's important. Now, here's another reason that put me over the top. Okay, this is one of the best trends from Mark Lawrence's Playbook Magazine, Preview Guide Magazine. Western Michigan 0-12 against the spread with revenge when they're coming off a straight-up win, taking on an opponent coming off a straight-up ATS win. And you know what is ironic is they were in that spot once this year, and it was when they played Miami. And they lost. They lost the game. They lost the cover. And there you go. Now, Miami, of course. Now, here's the interesting thing, too. Miami beat Ohio last year in the regular season, just like they beat Western Michigan in the regular season. Went to the championship game. They lost to Ohio 38-3. So if you're thinking that just because they beat Western Michigan, that you should take Miami, just remember what happened last year. You have to have more than that. You got to come up with other reasons. And again, that's not the reason why I'm taking him here either. It's not the only reason I'm taking him here. It's just that this is a program that's used to being in this position it's sort of like if you're thinking of a big conference, let's say it would have been like if Georgia had played Vanderbilt in the SEC championship game. That's really what it is. It's like Miami is playing a team. Western Michigan has not won a MAC championship since 2016. Miami has 2 wins, 2023 and 2019 with Chuck Martin, the longtime head coach for Miami. So you've got a program that is used to winning championships against the upstart Broncos from Western Michigan. And yet the upstart team is the favorite here. Now, keep in mind, Western Michigan led Miami 17-9 in the fourth quarter of that matchup earlier this year. But Miami just steamrolled them in the fourth quarter to get the win. And Finn had, a really big game in that one. So, look, I think this is just like the Kennesaw game. I see this one, this is going to be a good one, a close one, more than likely. Could go either way. Look, most people thought Miami and Ohio last year was going to be a close one, and look what happened. So anything is possible. But, hey, we'll see what happens. Okay. Next up. Oh, here's the other championship game. That it's not a whole lot, but out of the championship games, this is the third one, as I said, where you have one team losing rematch to the other team, but the team that lost the game is the 2-point favorite. Now, Jacksonville State, Kennesaw State, Western Michigan, Miami do not have the history that Alabama has in this one. Meaning, and this is the reason why, if you go back to, I think it was like week 4 when they played, I said the same thing that I'm going to say now. And it's happened again. And that is, I don't know how Alabama continues to be a dog in this series. I don't get it. Alabama has beaten Georgia 8 of the last 9 times they played them. And they've won 3 straight. This year, 2024, and 2023. The last 3 years, they've beaten Georgia 3 straight times, all as dogs. And after beating them as a dog again earlier this year, what is the line? This is the favorite again. I don't get it. I don't get it, but hey, good. Because Alabama is actually going to be my top play of the entire week. It was going to be between Alabama and Virginia, but Alabama is going to be my top play. They beat Georgia. They outgained them. Matter of fact, they did not trail in the game earlier this year. Simpson had a good game. Stockton did not. Until last week, Stockton had played, if you look back at his worst performances of the year, and it wasn't a terrible performance, but his least productive, it was the Alabama game. He only threw for 130 yards. That's it. Until last week. And I don't know what last week was. I don't understand what happened last week in the Georgia Tech-Georgia game. I mean, Georgia won the football game, and Stockton was 11 of 21 for 70 yards with a touchdown and pick. So for me, it's just another reason to like Alabama, to tell you the truth. So that's the reason I'm taking the Tide. And look, we'll find out. I don't think we're going to need to find out if Alabama loses, will they be in? But if they do lose, it is going to be a big story on Sunday to see if they make it or not. And then here is the other game that I just mentioned is considered one of my top plays. Of course, it's going to be one of my top plays. It was my top play that week when they beat Duke a few weeks ago. That was just 3 weeks ago. They were a 5-point road dog at Duke, and they won the yardage battle by nearly 300 yards. They kicked Duke's ass. Okay, they only won by 17, but it was like never in doubt. Okay, so they just beat up Duke 3 weeks ago, and now they're only a 3.5-point favorite. So I get the reason why, because they were a 5-point dog a few weeks ago. So this is still a 9-point swing in just a few weeks. But I'm okay with that because it's not like it was a pick 'em and it's 9 or 10. I only have to give up 3. And what I also like the fact is because it's one of the last games played I have already put together, I already did one parlay where I had Virginia on the money line and I had Alabama as a part of that. Now, the second, I had a 3-teamer. The third one's coming up. But you can do that, or you can just go ahead and do straight up. I know it's a lot at minus 166, but I think that's the way to go. Just in case. I still have no problem giving 3. I'm just saying, Jim Feist has taught me a lot as a handicapper, and if he taught me anything that stuck with me more than anything, it's when you're in that level there, just go with the money line. Okay. And remember the Duke Clemson game? Maybe you don't. The one in Clemson when it was a high scoring game and Duke had a 4th down and it was incomplete and the game was over and everybody was ready to go home. And then there was a flag. It was one of those, what's the flag for? And when we looked at the replay, it was like, yeah, I don't know about that. And I think it was even it might have been against Clemson's top corner, Terrell. I think so. Anyway, so they called a really, really weak penalty against Clemson. Now, just imagine if that didn't happen. Just imagine if they didn't throw the flag, because they shouldn't have. We wouldn't be here. That's how important those types of plays, those types of calls matter. I mean, it mattered that much. That's how big it was. Get this. Virginia has only had 1 loss since week 2 when they lost at North Carolina State. That was when they were at home against Wake Forest. And they lost 16-9. So you might go, well, that's not good. That's a pretty weak loss. Wake Forest is a pretty decent bowl team and all, but that's not good. Well, Chandler Morris got hurt in the game. So their only loss since week 2, their only loss in conference play, because we all know now North Carolina State game didn't count as a conference game. They lost because Chandler Morris was hurt in the second quarter when they were leading 6-0. And you know what happened at the end of the first half, just before the end of the first half? Wake Forest returned a punt, 88 yards for a touchdown, and led 7-6 at the half and never relinquished the lead. And they won 16-9 because the backup came in and didn't do a good job, and Virginia had no offense, and there you go. That's the only loss for Virginia since week 2. They destroyed Duke just a few weeks ago. Duke is 7-5. And Virginia's only a 3-point favorite. Okay. I'll go with that. And to wrap it all up, we wrap it up with the final game. And this is actually where I'm also going with the parlay. So I decided to go Alabama with Virginia and Ohio State money line. I don't know if I'm going to need it, but I figured what the heck, because I don't know what to expect from Indiana here, but I do know what to expect from Ohio State. And you really do have to be impressed with the way they played this season. Because even though I'm still not sure how they'll react to having to win, 3 consecutive, big game opponents, that sort of thing. Something they haven't done all year. They've had a pretty manageable schedule. Their toughest matchup was that first game, and it didn't turn out to be tough. As good as a team as most people thought it was going to be with Texas. But they did what they had to do, beat Illinois, went to Washington, beat Michigan, that sort of thing. But what really impressed me about Ohio State this season, more than anything, is their spread record of 9-1-1. And if you got to go back a long time to see when Ohio State has been that good, ATS. So they've been covering nearly every week. And once you get past the first game of the season against Texas, keep this in mind, which was a 7-point win, Ohio State ended up beating their last 11 opponents by 18 or more points. Okay. They beat all of their opponents, including Texas, by 7 or more. And now they get Indiana. And Indiana also undefeated, but 6-5 ATS. And also remember, Indiana had a couple of games that they were this close to losing. They beat Iowa by 5 and Penn State by 3, and we all remember how they beat Penn State on that last drive. They had the big win, no doubt, can't take it away from them. Big road win at Oregon. Won that game as the only time they were a dog this year too. And that was the first time, and the only time so far, since Cignetti's been there, that Indiana has beaten a quality team. So we'll see if he can do it again. I'm not going to go down that road. Ohio State has not been in this position. Matter of fact, when was the last time they were in this position? Let's see when that was. Because Michigan has been hogging that up lately. So when was the last time Ohio State was in the Big Ten championship game? Let's see. It was, there it is, 2020 when they beat Northwestern. So they have not won a Big Ten championship since 2020. Now, look, it's obvious when you put these two teams together which team is jonesing for a Big Ten championship. It's Indiana. So I get that. But my point is that don't think that just because Ohio State's the defending champs, that they're undefeated, that they beat Michigan, that they're just going to settle. We don't really care about the Big Ten championship. It's not the biggest thing in the world. Michigan was, and the playoffs are. This is just a game. No, this does matter. And it does matter also because they're facing an undefeated Big Ten team. So this is a major game for both teams, just as much as it is for Ohio State as it is for Indiana. The only difference is for Indiana is that it's big for them in effect because, again, it's Indiana. And I can't even tell you the last time they've been in this position. So that's why I'm taking Ohio State. I have no problem giving 4, but I might as well, since they're both at the same time at night, I just figured, well, let me just hit the money lines for him and go with my top play, Alabama, before that. Take Alabama straight, then and if they win, then I can just sit there and I'll just take Ohio State and Virginia on the money line. I won't take either one straight. If Alabama loses, then I'll have to think about what I'll do there. I might still just go back and still take Virginia and Ohio State on the money line parlay. I might still do that, but what I might do instead is just go ahead and just take Ohio State and Virginia, -3, -4. And that's going to do it. So that is it for our college football talk. And we all get the selections coming out on Sunday. I have no idea when I'll pop up. I don't know if it'll be Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, or I have no idea. But, we'll go into the playoffs. We're getting right into it. So that should be a lot of fun, having our playoff preview shows and predictions and all that kind of stuff. So Ohio State is clearly the only short team in my mind. Indiana at 4-1. I want nothing to do with them, but Ohio State, I think they deserve to be the heavy favorite to win the championship right now. The only way I would change my mind with that before the playoffs begin is if Indiana beats them. And if Indiana beats Ohio State, I'm just eliminating both teams because I'm just not picking Indiana to win the championship. I just don't think they're going to. I can't see them winning 3 big games in a row. I've never seen it, and I know they're a completely different program than they've ever been, and I get that, but you just don't do that. You had a nice first time in the playoffs last year, and that's nice. That was important, and you got that off. Check that off the list, and now you're ready to go back into the playoffs and win a game. But it's a big difference to going and win a game than to win 3 games and win a national championship. I know they can do it. I get that. And I'm not saying they can't do it, but I'm not taking Indiana at 4-1. There's no reason for me to do that when I could take Notre Dame at 12-1? Why would I take Indiana at 4-1 when I can get Notre Dame at 12-1? And I can get Ole Miss at 33-1. Why would I take Indiana at 4-1? I mean, there's hardly any difference at all in talent between those teams. We just went over that. There's just no major difference. So why on earth would I take Indiana at 4-1? Let's talk NFL. So let's go into week 14 in the NFL. And let me go ahead and pop up the NFL, and we'll run through the latest lines. And tomorrow on the Playbook ATS podcast, we'll break down some of the key injuries and so forth. I don't have a whole lot of time to do that here on the show. So check us out at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Mark Lawrence hosting the Playbook ATS podcast, Jim Feist, Andy Isco, and I will be there. All right. Thursday, Dallas and Detroit. And boy, the Dallas Cowboys are playing some really good football. I think it's a great story. They've won 3 straight up ATS since the bye, including back-to-back upset wins against the Super Bowl teams. First, it was the champs Philly. Then it was the runner-ups Kansas City. And you know what's kind of funny, too, is both of those situations, they weren't home, but they were 3-point dogs. Well, they're now a 3-point road dog. So they're trying to win 3 straight as 3-point dogs in a row. Detroit, meanwhile, looked like they were going to get their all-world center back, and then all of a sudden, no, it's not happening. He's not healthy enough. He's not playing. That had to be a big blow. And, we've talked a lot about Detroit this season and Dan Campbell, what a great spread team they are, and blah, blah, blah. Well, the run ended in their matchup. Which one was it? It was the last, trying to remember who they played. Oh, the Giants. And it was the first time that they didn't cover under Dan Campbell when they were coming off a loss. First time. And that was the Giants. And then what happened the next week? They lost to the Packers. So there's something not right with the Lions right now. Everything's right with the Cowboys right now. And check this out. How often do we say negative things about Detroit with trends? Well, the Lions are 2-10 against the spread at home off a straight up favored loss when they take on an opponent off a straight up ATS win. So yeah, I think what the play is, in my mind, I think the play is either take Dallas or don't take the game. I just couldn't take Detroit right now against the way the Cowboys are playing, with the way the Lions are playing in this spot. And Dallas also has a little revenge on their minds because Detroit annihilated Dallas last year. Annihilated them. All right, not much to say here with the Tampa Bay Saint game. Bucks 1-3 straight up, 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 games. It's all happened since the bye. We all thought that they went into the bye. They were 6-2. They needed to get healthy. And it's worked the opposite way. They just really didn't get healthy until last week when they got Irving back. It was the second week for Godwin. Bredesen returned. And yet they still couldn't cover the game. But look, I think that really, the thing that really disappointed me was that they didn't score more. I mean, I really thought they should have scored more than 20. But look, they had a 20-3 lead. Arizona had 2 late touchdowns to kind of backdoor, even though Arizona had the ball. With about a minute left, deep in their territory, and he went 4 and out. I mean, it was like a terrible, terrible drive. It wasn't even a drive. The road team, though, has covered 6 straight in this division rivalry matchup. So that does scare me a little. Plus, when you're not covering games like Tampa Bay has not been, I just wouldn't feel comfortable. They'll win, but it's a lot of points. I do feel comfortable taking Seattle, though. Seattle's a 7-point favorite. Atlanta, meanwhile, has lost 6 out of 7. Their season is over. And get this interesting trend. They've dropped 8 straight covers, 11 straight covers before they play a Thursday night game. And they'll be at Tampa on Thursday. So for what that's worth, throw in the fact that Seattle has a 5-1 straight up ATS record on the road this year. And the only time that they did not cover was against Tennessee, the last road game, and that was a backdoor cover as well. Look, I've already put money on Cincinnati to both win the division and the Super Bowl. I was able to get them at, I think I have them I think they're 100-1 to win the Super Bowl. I got them at. And here's the reason why. Because if Joe Burrow can get this team to play the way they played against Baltimore, now that's the mystery. We know they can play that offensively. Can the defense play anywhere like the way they've, I mean, it was like watching the Bengals play defense last week was like, what? We haven't seen them play that type of defense since they went to the Super Bowl. So if they can play that type of defense the rest of the season, they're going to win the division. And then if they win the division and you got Joe Burrow in the playoffs and we know how money he is at that time of year, I'm sorry, I'm getting 100-1. I'm taking it. So Burrow has beaten Josh Allen both times he's played him, one regular season, one playoff game. But look, here's the problem with Cincinnati. And look, I understand why they're 100-1. I understand all that, and I get it. Remember this, even though it's not likely that teams anymore, well, it still can happen, but we haven't seen it in a while where a team wins the division with a sub 500 record. But if it's going to happen, it could happen this year. So let's say Cincinnati loses to Buffalo. Some people will say, oh, they're out of it. No, they still have Baltimore next week. And let's say they still have a win and a split with Pittsburgh. So let's say, and check the schedule out after Baltimore. So let's say they beat Baltimore. All right. And they sweep Baltimore now. So they got the edge there. Their last 3 games are against Miami, Arizona, and Cleveland. So if they beat Baltimore and they play well against Buffalo but lose, of course they're going to win their next 3, right? And if they do that and they get to 8 and 9, that might be good enough to win the division. And so I don't care what their record is, as long as they win the division, because they're not going to get a wild card. As long as they win that division, they're in the postseason, and they end up with what would it be? 5-1 the last 6 going in the playoffs. Hell yeah! Watch out for Cincinnati. But yeah, I'm taking Cincinnati in this one anyway. I'm getting 6. I'm getting 2-1 on the money line with Burrow. And look, if Buffalo was playing the way they played the last few years, that would be different. I would not jump on this game as easily. But because Buffalo has not been playing well this year, they've been very erratic. You don't know what you're getting from them from week to week. Why not take the chance with the Bengals here on the money line? Throw in the fact that Buffalo has dropped 8 straight covers as a favorite of more than 3 when they take on an opponent off a double-digit win. And they're 0-1 in that role this year. So I'm taking the Bengals plus the 6. Speaking of 6 and speaking of the AFC North, here you go. You've got Pittsburgh, you have Baltimore, and it wasn't long ago that dogs ruled. And this matchup of these two teams would be incredibly close every game. One team won by 3, another team won by 3, but mostly the dog would win. And Pittsburgh would be that dog a lot. But the last 2, Baltimore changed all that. They changed all of it last year. End of the regular season win, postseason win. They beat Pittsburgh by a 62-31 margin as the favorite in both. Before that, though, Pittsburgh had won 4 straight. And again, like I said, Pittsburgh for quite a long time had a good number against Baltimore. So I don't know, really, I'm not saying I love Pittsburgh because I don't. How can you? They're 2-5 in their last 7. But because it's 6 and I'd be getting 235 on the money line, I think it's worth it. So I'm going to go ahead and take Pittsburgh in this one. It's more of a knock against Baltimore than anything. Both teams 6-6. So this is one of those types of matchups. And these two teams will play again in a few weeks. So whoever wins this one is going to have a big advantage. And speaking of big division matchups, Jacksonville and the Colts are feeling it. So Houston was a big play for us last week. And the Colts, even though they've dropped 3 out of 4, they're the 1-point road favorite here. Jacksonville, meanwhile, has won their last 3 straight up ATS by an 87-33 margin. And they are 2-0 this year as a home dog. They beat the Chiefs. They beat the Chargers. Taking a look at the series, Jacksonville has won 7 of 11. They've covered 9 of 11. And they've won 10 straight at home against the Colts. So you know which way I'm going. I'm taking the Jags plus the 1.5 plus the 2. The one thing, though, that does say maybe the Colts might have something to say. They've covered 11 straight off of a straight-up division-favored loss. But I'm going to go ahead and take the Jags in this one. And then you got Cleveland and Tennessee. I mean, you knew if the Browns were a 4.5-point favorite, it would be against either Tennessee or New Orleans. So, but that defense against Ward, the only thing is I can't really put money on the Browns with Shedeur Sanders. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. But I mean, because the other thing too is with Tennessee, they've only won once all year. So you would think that if they're going to win again, I mean, I guess this is a shot. Another bad game. Division rivals, Jets and Dolphins. Miami's really owned the series for a while, including a win earlier this year. Minnesota is a 2-point favorite in this one. And it's interesting because earlier the week, because nobody knew the status of J.J. McCarthy in our Wise Guy contest, Washington was a 2-point favorite. And I was really thinking of taking Minnesota. And then I said, no, I shouldn't do that. Because Jaden Daniels is supposed to come back or might be coming back. So you got to keep an eye on that, of course. I think it's official. Is it official yet? The Jaden Daniels? It's only Wednesday. Let's see. Is Jaden Daniels coming back? Like I said, I've kind of been out of commission checking this stuff out for a while. No, nothing yet. So we don't know yet. So keep that in mind. But hey, I tell you what, if it looks like he's not playing, then I would definitely jump on Minnesota. Maybe this will be a good thing for JJ. He missed a week. So anytime a quarterback's struggling, a young quarterback is struggling, taking time off is always a good thing. But Aaron Jones is also banged up. Look, the Vikings aren't going to the playoffs. The only reason, like I said, I would take this game for sure is if it's Marcus Mariota again. But even at that case, I can't take Minnesota really seriously because even with McCarthy, they're just not doing anything on offense. All right, Denver and the Raiders. So speaking of top picks, this is going to be it. This will be my top pick for the week. Taking Denver minus the 7.5. They have covered 9 straight as a division road favorite of more than 3, which is what I want to see. Last week I didn't take them because when we went over the trends and all the trends had to go against them. That was a bad spot for Denver last week, and it proved it. They barely held on to beat Washington. So this week is a lot different. So the numbers are back on their side. They've won 9 straight. They're taking on a division opponent that has 2 wins. It's sort of like the Tennessee-Jacksonville game last week. I don't know why, but the line kept dropping, and I just couldn't figure it out. It didn't drop a lot, but it was like at 6, and then it went down to 5.5, and then to 5, and then I don't know if it went back to 5.5, but I don't why. I didn't understand it, and I think sometimes you overthink things, and I think that's what was happening last week. But yeah, I only have to give 7 in this spot. Because the thing is, it's a division game. So whenever you get a division game, you're not going to have a team that's going to I'm going to take the week off. Now, the first matchup was ugly, and I get it, but I'm willing to wager that Denver is not going to play like that again. Expect them to play that bad again against Las Vegas. I don't know. I just can't see it. Not twice in the same season. Also, the Raiders are 2-10-1 against the spread. Their last 13 coming off a double-digit spread loss. Here you have the Rams in Arizona. And I don't really see look, I like the Rams in this one, but Arizona, even they almost dropped their fourth straight cover if they didn't come back and cover last week. So it's not like they're not the cover team they were earlier this season. But even so, it's again a division game. Arizona is not showing any quit. And even though I have no doubt the Rams win this game, it's not going to be a top play for me. But yeah, I think the Rams are clearly the way to go for coming off a loss, and it being a division game. Speaking of division matchups, you got the Bears and the Packers. And this might be one of the first times I took them. I've gone with the Bears before this season for the most part. For a team that's won 9 out of 10, I haven't really gone their way very often, but this is one I will. As a 6.5-point dog, I think they're being a little disrespected here. They're the number 1 seed in the NFC, and they've won 9 out of 10, and they're getting almost 7. Look, I get it. I'm still not a big Caleb Williams fan. I do not think that's going to work out. I just don't. I don't see any maturation from him. I don't care that he was able to come from behind in the last minute when they were down by Minnesota, and he's made a play here and a play there. You know who's also made plays here and there when he's had spotty games to win games? Zach Wilson. I've seen Zach Wilson with the Jets over his career come up with big plays and win games. And look at him right now. So I don't think I don't see any consistency in Caleb Williams' game right now. No, maybe it'll come. We still have a few games left. But for a team that's won 9 out of 10, it's not because of Caleb Williams. We all know who is running this team and is doing a phenomenal job. The running game has also been fantastic. I got to give the defense credit. They've had a banged up secondary all season, but they've hung in there. They've also had a manageable schedule. I get that. But last week's win should have been proof that this team isn't going anywhere. So that's why I'll take the Bears and the 7 here in this spot. And they'll play the Packers again in 2 weeks. Houston and the Chiefs. And wow. I mean, check Kansas City out. They've lost 6 games this year. They're 6-6. They've lost 6 games by 25 points. 6 by 25 points. So what is that? That is, let's see, 25 divided by 6, 4.1 points per game. That's how they're losing games. How about that? They've lost 3 out of 4. They've dropped all 4 covers in those 4. But they've owned this series. They've beaten Houston 5 straight, including 2 playoff games. Houston, though, is on a roll. As we said with the game, the big Indy-Jacksonville game. They've won 4 straight, even though all 4 are by 1 score. And their last 3 wins by a total of 11 points. So what do you think we're going to get in this one? Which is why I'm taking Houston. Because when you're getting 2 teams that are playing a lot of close games, well, take the points. That's the way I'm going to. So even if Kansas City wins, I'm getting 4, and that's what I'm going to do. We can't really say that Kansas City needs the game more. Houston needs the game just as much. So I'm taking a team. I'm taking the team that is just finding ways to win versus the team that's finding ways to lose. And the last one is Philly and the Chargers. I'm actually taking the Chargers in this one. Eagles coming off that disappointing loss on Black Friday to the Bears. Chargers, meanwhile, they had to buy, came off of it, handled Las Vegas pretty easily. Check this out. This is the first dog roll for the Chargers since week 1. They have not been a dog since opening week. They are 11-1 against the spread as a non-conference dog of more than 2. So this is a good spot for them. Also, the Chargers really are in, we said this last week, is that they couldn't mess around with the Raiders. Why? Because of the schedule that was coming up, starting this week with Philly. After this week, they play the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Texans, and the Broncos. No team has a tougher final 5 than the Chargers. So they're already dialed in. They were dialed in last week. That's why they blew out the Raiders. The Eagles, meanwhile, in 3 of their last 4 games, they'll be playing Las Vegas and the Commanders twice. So Philly has got a good schedule. They're not, in other words, I think the Chargers really are in a much more like, again, I think they're just more dialed in. I think they understand how important these games are. They've got to be dialed in every week. They got to win these games. They're not going to win them all, but that's, the Eagles, meanwhile, I mean, they got three insurance policy games. They don't have to win this week. That kind of approach. They're the defending Super Bowl champs. But the bottom line is they're not playing well. So you can take all that gobbledygook out of the way. The fact is that the Eagles have just not played well this year, all things considering. And I think the only thing that's actually saving them from potentially not making the playoffs is that schedule. I think that's a big break for them. Look, if they win this game with that schedule, maybe they'll get back on a run. But I'll take the Chargers in this one plus the 3. And that's going to wrap it up. So thanks for tuning in. Check us out on Thursday for the Playbook ATS podcast, again at 1 o'clock. You can also check out Jim Feist's show he did earlier today. That's in the library here at Proline TV. I'll be with Jim and Mark on Friday at 3 o'clock to wrap up the week with the latest on the NFL and college football. So you could also join us tomorrow. I'm not sure if we're doing it in the afternoon or the evening, but we got our horse racing show again tomorrow. We've got races at Aqueduct, including the Cigar Mile. So that's coming up with John Hardoon. And don't forget, Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post is going to join us tomorrow at 1 o'clock to talk a little bit about the New York Giants. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night, everybody. Have a great week. If I don't see you till next week. And if you have any questions or comments, please let me know. I know you guys have done it before. I'll answer you. And I hope I get to see you guys again here real soon. So again, have a great week. We'll see you next time.